Why do so many mythical characters ignore prophecy? Well, Dagda Agus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan, the Irish Pagan School. And this is a very interesting question, which warrants a bit of a breakdown and a bit of processing through, because though there might be a very simple and easy answer to give, the underlying frustrations behind the person who asked the question is worth taking the time to go that little bit deeper and to explore. So I actually have the question here. I'm going to read it out to honor the person's effort and energy in writing it. Why do characters in mythology pretty consistently and epically ignore what the prophet tells them to do? I'm a divination witch, and I find this to be true in real life as well. People ask a question about what they should do, and the cards practically fly out of my hand with sound practical advice, and they likewise ignore the counsel they have been given. I understand that much of the mythology is for future generations, like don't make hundreds of people die so you can have a larger herd, but that is too simplistic, and the ignored lessons of history scream at us to know better and do better. I would love to see you chat on that. Thanks. So this comes from someone in our Patreon community. So Gaurav Milamaga, thank you very much for the kesh. And I love the phrasing of your term there. The ignored lessons of history scream at us to know better and do better. And that is the underlying aspect and the underlying element of the why, or the simplistic why that you've already identified. So neat answer, not hard to say. In the mythology, why do people consistently and epically ignore prophecy? Well, it's to provide the teaching of having had that story show how things are done wrong and the impact of things being done wrong. Now, it is a simplistic answer, but when we talk about the Irish mythology specifically, the core underlying element here that can't be ignored is that ancient Ireland was an oral tradition society. Everything was done in story and story, and the tales and the lineages and the experiences and the epic deeds and the epic failings, all of which were what were carried down generation on generation to provide insight and wisdom. Stories in the ancient Irish context were not just told for the crack, not just told for the fun and the entertainment of it. Of course, they had to be fun and entertaining to keep people's attention, but there was always some element of learning, some element of teaching, some moral of the story, some insight. And it is brilliant to see when people begin to explore the mythology, the Ireland's mythology, and kind of tease out what those lessons are. I could turn around and say, oh, well, obviously this question here is about this, or this story is about that, and point people and tell them the teaching that comes from it. But much more impactful I have seen in teaching people how to explore Irish mythology is when they get it from themselves. So neat answer, not hard to say. Why do people in the mythology so consistently and epically ignore prophets and prophecies? It's because that's part of the story. Like if the person followed the prophet or the wisdom and lived happily ever after, there really wouldn't be much of a story. So that is the simplistic answer, and that is one that you're already aware of because you've mentioned it. It's too simple to say, oh, it's just because that's the nature of the story. So to go that little step deeper and to kind of chew into it that bit further, I think we have to look at not the ignorance of the prophecy, but the definition and understanding of prophecy. What is it that we talk about when we talk about prophecy? Now, most folks, when they are presented with divinatory readings or prophecy or whatever, they come to it with a question. Um, but thanks to modern media or thanks to cultural circumstances, people are looking for answers. They're not looking for guidance. And that is the breaking part for most folk I have seen coming to explore divination or explore answers via divination. All they're ever going to get is insight, is perspective, is guideposts, is heads up and notices. It's not, oh, this is 100% guaranteed the lotto numbers for next week. Or like the tall, dark stranger is named Francis and he lives five houses down. You'll meet him walking your dog next Tuesday. Like That's why there is no answer. There is no, this is the one true information that comes from prophecy. Prophecy is about insight, perspective, guidance, and letting you know where you are now on your journey and what steps you may need to take next in your journey. So, why do people ignore prophecy or divinatory answers? Is because they're not looking for work. They're looking for an easy answer. Those who come looking for work, those who look who honor the effort involved with it and want to grow and change for themselves, they are delighted when they get those answers. They are delighted when they get, and again, it's not even an answer, an insight or a perspective that puts them in the right direction or lets them know a reassurance that they are in the right direction. They are doing the right things where they are right now, and they just have to stay the course. But those who consistently ignore the answers of divination are usually showing that they are not at the point where they have considered their question fully. And I think that's the other side of prophecy, as we see it in the Irish paganism practices of mythology. And it's one I've worked around myself and trying to understand divinatory practices. I'm not a divination witch myself, but I do at times from my own experiences get glimpses, get insights, get perspectives, usually comes in the form of dream or arrives later on as a feeling of deja vu when I realize that I have dreamt this before and I've now reached that, as I call it, checkpoint in my growth and my progress. So, um, yeah, time and again, when someone comes seeking answers, usually they haven't actually put enough effort and energy into the question. And that is where I would always kind of encourage the person first. And I've written stories about this because I'm so inspired about it. It's less about having an answer and more about having a really good, really well thought out question, because then you've already done all of the ego work. You've already done all of the considerations, the banal stuff, the basic, the mundane. If you are going to be coming seeking divination, if you're looking for prophecy, if you're looking to go beyond the information that is readily available, then put the fucking work in and access the readily available information first. That is the only way you'll know or be ready to consider input that goes beyond that mundane. And as frustrating as it may be, the onus is on the person coming to have done that work. Time and again, I get emails into the Irish Pagan School and it's like, oh yeah, I here's the answer to this and that and this, and I'm like, great, good on you, you have found your answer, good for you. But if someone comes like, listen, I've read this, I've looked at this, and I have that, and I've explored this, and this question bothers me or bugs me, I will sit down and take all the time I have available because that is a well thought out question. That is someone who's showing their work, and that is someone who is ready for guidance or steps in the next direction. And that, more than anything, is where people will find change and will find the growth that they're looking for, be it from education, mentorship, or even divination or prophecy work or anything else, spiritual guidance from God's guides and guardians. I get that myself. Sometimes I get deity-based, I call it deity-based downloads, where I've reached my wit's end. I've read everything, I've explored here, I've done this, and I'd be sitting there sipping on my coffee, being like, well, what the fuck do I do next? And then I would exhale, take a breath, and next thing you know, some part of either Imbos Varasna, some kind of connected bardness to greater knowledge, or in many cases, a poke from the Dagda, who is the god that I work for, being like, it's over there. Or you already know this, you just don't know it this life around, and you need to go and check your own real life archives. Um, but there are many ways to access information and access knowledge. And again, there are many, many stories in the Irish mythology where people don't. People go against prophecy, they rile against it because it makes for a better narrative. But this question put me uh, wondering. It actually stimulated my bird's brain so much. And I was like, is there anyone who does follow prophecy, who does take the information, take the guidance that they gain and do something with it proactively and productively? And I was wondering, I was like, well, you could say Lugh being born of prophecy, we get the Second Battle of Moytura, he's destined to kill Balor. Balor had gone against prophecy, tried to keep his daughter locked up so she wouldn't give birth to the grandchild or grandchildren who would kill him. Like, so that's examples of people going against prophecy. So in that instance, is Lugh going with prophecy, or is he just the fulfillment of a prophecy that has already been made manifest? No, it doesn't really fit. What we're looking for here is someone who seeks guidance, who seeks prophecy, who seeks insight, and then does something with it. Then actually takes those steps. And it was on this morning's walk as I was out with my partner Laura walking around a local park beneath some really old, beautiful trees that my brain, like, I said this question to Laura. I was like, I'm still trying to chew this over, and deity-based download, shuffle step behind me, and the Dagda. And then the story arrived for me because, yes, the Dagda did seek insight. He sought prophecy. He sought knowledge outside of his ability to gain in a mundane manner. And that is in the precursor to the wind up to the battle of the Second Battle of Moytura. The Dagda leaves the meeting of the men and the goddess, where he has conversations with Nuada, Dean Hecht, Gwivnu, and a couple of other sages and druids, and they're trying to figure out, well, what's going to happen when the Fomorians invade. But they don't know where the Fomorians are going to invade. And it says he crosses Ireland to a house that he kept near Glen Etchin, near the River Unshin, and there he met with a woman. Red woman, red tresses, red robes. She's washing herself, standing either one foot either side of a ford. All of the imagery is there, all of the liminality is there, all of the other world power and presence is there. He comes to her, he watches her, they couple together on the ford. The ford is known as the bed of the couple thereafter. And then she tells him prophecy. She gives him the insight and the information that he cannot gain any other way, which is where the Fomorians are going to land in Ireland. And that woman was the Morrigan. So we have an instance here in the stories where our hero, protagonist, goes and seeks insight, divinatory wisdom. There's no other way he could have accessed this information. So he goes and seeks guidance from a prophetess, a prophet, goddess of prophecy, of prophecy. And he doesn't go against it. He doesn't, ignore it. He doesn't let rile against it, but also he doesn't grab everyone to catch them when they first arrive with a snap invasion and murder them before they start. He does something that is very interesting in the story. He goes on his own. He casts off his kind of raiments as a chieftain and as a druid and everything else, and he dresses like a poor, humble farmer. And it says he goes to spy on them, but he goes to try and, in my reading of the story, talk them out of it, try and not have a war. And what he finds in the camp of Indech is constant abuse and difficulty, all of which is trying to justify their invasion of Ireland and justify their war. So in this instance, the Dagda is following prophecy. And unfortunately, it's not a case of he follows prophecy and it's happy ever after. He follows prophecy, sure, but it turns into hard work. It turns into effort. It turns into abuse, if we read it that way. He is physically put upon to eat an entire trough of porridge that's been poured into a ditch in the ground. He's then like to reject that would be to cause insult. Insult would insult Indech. Indech is a Fomorian chieftain. Oh, I've justified the war. He then staggers out of the camp, absolutely distended and bloated from having eaten a huge amount of porridge. But it's not just comfortable, hearty porridge. It's also full of meat and offal and everything else. Like it's kind of gross. But he can't cause offense. He then meets Indech's daughter, a person who is not even given a name in the mythology, and she puts upon him to carry her on her back, on his back, and he's like trying to talk his way out of it, but she pretty much has been set here as the second trap. If he offends or harms Indech's daughter, Indech's war and invasion is justified. So he has the shit literally kicked out of him. She kicks him until he voids himself right there. And then she's like, well, clean yourself up if you have to carry me. So he's then forced to strip naked, clean himself off with the only shirt he has wearing, and then carry and be demeaned carrying this index daughter on his back around Ireland. And all the while she's putting like she's slating him, she's slagging him, she's pretty much kicking him, and he's enduring it. Why would he do that? Why in any other reason would he do that if not to try and not justify a war? Eventually the abuse goes further. It leads to a sexual interaction in a ford. And it's almost like there's a mirroring of the earlier narrative where he goes and meets with his partner and they have a loving coupling in the ford and he receives insight and information. In this, pretty much Index Daughter is puts upon him and takes advantage of him. At the end of which he has caused no offense, he has caused no harm, he has not betrayed hospitality in any way, but he has been physically abused, emotionally abused, verbally abused, energetically abused, and some could say sexually abused. But he endures it because he's trying not to justify the war. He's trying to prevent the war. Like, why go do any of this if not to try and prevent the war? What comes of it at the end is that Index Daughter is like, this war is going to happen whether you try and stop it or not. Like, may come away with me, don't engage. And he's like, I am going to the war because that is what my people are doing and that is what I need to do for my people. And she's like, well, I'll stop you, I'll prevent you going to the war. And he's like, well, you can't prevent me. I'm going to the war because that's what my people need. And then at the end of that narrative, she says, okay, well, when the war comes, I will go against my own people and I will side with yours. So it's an odd part of the second battle of Moytura. Like, why would any of that happen? Why would a, a chieftain, a king, the one who is known for all of the great powers of Druidry, at the meeting of the Men of the Goddess, he promises to do everything that everyone else has promised: rain fire from the skies, hide every lake and river in Ireland, increase the valor of the Tuatha Dé Danann, cause like a diminishing of valor amongst the Fomorians, and everyone else is like, hands off. If the Dagda says it's done, it's as good as fucking done. So why? Why would he follow prophecy and endure all of that? Because he was trying to do the thing that no one else seemed inclined to do, which was talk everyone out of a war. So, how does this connect with prophecy and people connecting to it? Well, true answers, because there are no actual answers. The guidance that we get from prophecy points us towards more effort, directs us towards more work. So to answer this particular person's question, neat answer, not hard to say. Why do people in the mythology ignore the words of prophets? Why do people in real life ignore the words of prophets? Because it's not an easy answer. It's a direction to more effort and more work. And if a person's not ready for that, if a person hasn't prepared themselves for growing in the directions that they need to grow, or for facing their challenges, their darker sides, their disruptions, the work that they need to do on themselves, it's absolutely easy to ignore that insight, to ignore that perspective, to carry on with their learned behaviors or their intentional ignorance. If you've taken time to go and get a divinatory insight and you choose not to do it, not to do anything with it, you're choosing to be intentionally ignorant. You're choosing to carry on and to not grow and to not change. Or you came with a question that wasn't the right question, and you need to go back to exploring what is the next step for yourself and what is the next point of growth. So, thank you. I think it was Betty who asked this question, and I really appreciate the opportunity to think about it and to talk about it. Time and again, it has to start with mundane information first. Anyone who's going to turn a tarot card instead of like open a book and do research, okay, maybe even turn the cards to find out where is it the right book or is it not the right book. There are different ways to engage with your divinatory practice, but someone who's going to go first to divinatory means without actually putting in the mundane effort first may not actually be getting to the point of asking proper questions to actually get the growth they want. And again, I might be speaking out of turn, but this is the nature of the question that's asked. Why do people ignore it? Well, those are the experiences I've had as to why people ignore it. But I have seen time and again when people are ready, when people have put the effort in to get that right question, then the guidance that they get leads to a greater level of growth, a later, greater level of, in some cases, challenge, but it's always, almost always, a leveling up process for themselves, either in their personal life, their work lives, their commitment lives, their relations lives, whatever it is. So, yeah, there are no simple answers. The responses you get from divination for the most part are guideposts, indicators along the lines of where you go next. But in almost all of the cases, the effort and the onus is on the person asking the question to take on board the effort and do the work. So, yeah, here at the Irish Pagan School, you may have heard us say it multiple times, do the work. That is an element of doing the work. It is acknowledging the fact that there is no shortcut. There is no magic boop on the head and suddenly you're connected to the Irish of the world. There are experiences that happen. There are natural upsurging or swelling experiences that do happen organically for some people. But the only way you're going to build a consistent practice to grow in your spirituality, to engage in yourself and the next levels of your person, I was going to say personality, your personal process or personal connection to your spirituality is to do the reading, to take the learning, to figure out the ego stuff, and so that you can put it aside or integrate it healthily, whichever way you need to do it. So I feel like I've talked around this from a number of different angles. I do hope I've answered the question. There are people in the stories who do follow prophecy, but even then, the stories aren't about and they lived happily ever after. The stories are about, yep, they had the inside track, but they had to do the fucking work anyway. So thank you very much for the cast and the question. Really appreciate it. And we have a lot of free information at the Irish Pagan School. If a whole lot of free resources, go to irishpagan.school/free, pick up something there, watch another YouTube video. If you want to pick up on the podcast and hear my voice sharing insights and stories, etc. on the walk, that's available for you there too. And if you have a cast or a question, fire it in the comments. Who knows? I might be able to come around and provide some insight or perspective for that too. Until next time, look after yourself, take care, agus slán. Goodbye.